You wouldn't notice her right away. Not unless the light caught the ink curling around her neck. Not unless she turned her head and you caught a glimpse of violet hair, a silver lip ring, or that gaze, the one that seemed like it had seen the end of the world and made art out of it. Natalie Graves wasn't famous. Not yet. But she was trying, clawing, towards something that felt like it. Born in Tacoma, Washington, Natalie's life didn't start with many promises. Her father, who she never really remembered, vanished sometime after her 4th birthday. And her mother, Angela, wasn't the nurturing type, always chasing a new man, a new town, or a new excuse. So Natalie was raised for the most part by someone who didn't choose her, but never walked away, her grandmother, Miriam. A retired nurse with arthritis in both knees and a television that rarely changed channels. Miriam wasn't warm, but she was consistent. And for Natalie, that was enough. In that small second-floor apartment with peeling wallpaper and stained carpet, Natalie found a strange kind of freedom. No one checked her phone. No one told her what to wear. She had space. And when you grow up with nothing but silence and walls, you either break, or you build. Natalie built. By the time she turned 15, she had already tattooed her first design. Not on anyone else, just a piece of synthetic practice skin, ordered online using a debit card she wasn't technically allowed to have. It was clumsy. The lines were uneven. The shading was off. But it was hers. She kept practicing. Drawing. Shading. Watching YouTube tutorials late into the night. She'd wrap her grandmother's old heating pad around her legs and sketch until sunrise. Her notebooks filled with gothic figures, anime characters, and fragments of faces she couldn't name but couldn't stop recreating. People at school didn't know what to make of her. She wore black eyeliner like armor. Her hair changed colors every other month. Turquoise, fire red, icy white. Her jeans were always torn, her boots scuffed. The teachers saw her as a phase. Her classmates? A mix of fascination and avoidance. But the internet saw her. At 17, she started a public Instagram account. She named it at ghost.graves. It was just sketches at first, shots of her designs, close-ups of eye details, fantasy wings, gothic cats, bleeding roses. But slowly she added more of herself, a tattoo needle in her hand, her first full back piece done on a friend, her arm sleeve which she had done on herself in sections. The page grew, slowly at first, then faster. By 19 she had over 50,000 followers. By 20 she was getting brand deals from indie tattoo ink companies. She moved out of Miriam's place and into a small studio apartment above an old bodega in Seattle. The rent was terrible. The windows leaked cold air. But she had privacy, space, walls she could hang her art on. It wasn't a dream life, but it was hers. When the pandemic hit, Natalie didn't slow down. She adapted. She offered digital art commissions, created online courses for beginner tattoo artists, and even hosted a series of TikTok lives where she taught shading techniques to an audience of thousands. The girl who once hid behind a hoodie and headphones was now showing up on People's For You pages with half-sleeve dragons and a fierce "don't mess with me" grin. By 2021, Natalie had relocated again, this time to San Diego, California. Why San Diego? Because the sun makes the ink pop, she once said in a live stream. But if you asked her closest friends, they'd say something else. She was chasing something. Recognition. Validation. A kind of spotlight no studio apartment in Tacoma could ever give her. In San Diego, things escalated quickly. She started booking high-end clients. Models, influencers, even one local actor whose chest piece got 3 million views on TikTok. She collaborated with a luxury tattoo studio in downtown, though she still preferred working from her home loft in East Village. More gritty, more her. Her following surged past 300,000. And she began experimenting, not just with ink but with image. She dyed her hair lavender. She leaned into cosplay, full-body transformations into gothic anime characters. She launched a digital store, selling prints, presets, course packages. Money rolled in. Sponsorships. Brand collaborations. She was by every metric on the rise. But something, or someone, was about to bring it all crashing down. She met Dean Mercer on a Thursday. He was quiet. Too quiet for someone with tattoos up his neck and a bored look in his eyes. He walked into her shop asking for a full sleeve, biomechanical with rusted car parts and Japanese lettering. Natalie didn't know why, but she took the job. He paid cash. Booked 4 sessions. Never smiled. At first, she thought he was just another gearhead with too much testosterone and not enough therapy. But session after session he kept coming back, not just for the ink but the silence. The way he listened. The way he looked at her. Not like a fan. Not like a client. Like someone watching a building burn from the inside. She didn't know it then. But this man, with his shaky past, his ex-girlfriend in the rearview mirror, and a brain wired all wrong, he wouldn't just mark her skin. He would mark her fate. You could say he was a nobody, but the kind of nobody who watches everything and remembers. Dean Mercer was never the loudest voice in the room, never needed to be. Quiet. Polite. A little too polite, in fact. Like someone who learned the hard way not to speak unless spoken to. He grew up in Tucson, Arizona, a place with more sun than shadows, except in his house. His mother died before he turned 10. Cancer, they said. Fast and unforgiving. His father remarried before the year was over. Dean never talked much about the stepmom. Just that she wasn't cruel. She wasn't kind either. She was just there. He spent most of his time alone, sketching cars in the back of his school notebooks. Not flashy ones, not Lamborghinis or Ferraris, but rusted muscle cars with scratched paint and busted grills. The kind of cars that needed fixing. Dean liked broken things. By the time he was 16, he had already learned how to strip an engine. Not from school. From the forums. He was active on half a dozen online boards under names like Rust Soul 86 and Graveyard Tuner. Mostly older men there, hobbyists and retired mechanics. Dean was the youngest, but he asked the right questions. Shared photos of his rebuilds. Gained quiet respect. He never made friends at school. Didn't date. Didn't party. But his room smelled like oil and soldering smoke. Posters of 67 Mustangs curled on the corners from the heat. He'd sit for hours modifying car sketches, then write strange poetry in the margins. It didn't rhyme. Didn't even flow. Just fragmented thoughts. Sentences like, "If I disappear, would anyone notice before the coffee gets cold? Graves are cleaner than bedrooms. I like girls who don't know they're being watched." Nobody saw those notebooks but him. At least not yet. At 18, Dean met Melissa Craig. She was older by a year, extroverted, full of bite and ambition. They met in a community college art class. She thought his drawings were cool. He thought she looked like the type who wouldn't settle for boring. They clicked, or maybe she just pulled him along. Within a year, they were living together in a rental on the outskirts of Phoenix. Melissa had a wild streak, always chasing big ideas. She dragged Dean into one of them. Adult content creation. At first, it was just for kicks. Some edgy photos. Short clips. All blurred, all anonymous. But soon it turned into a business. Melissa handled branding, editing, social media. Dean handled the camera, and sometimes the performances. It was illegal, technically. Arizona had gray laws. They found a loophole online, used crypto, avoided detection. But it was risky. Dean didn't care. For the first time, someone needed him. Fast forward to 2021. Melissa decided she wanted something bigger. New market. New clients. A new city. They packed up and moved to San Diego. Melissa believed they were still a team. But Dean had other ideas. By now, their relationship was showing cracks, deep ones. Melissa was becoming frustrated with his detachment. His silence. The way he would stare at her, expressionless, even when they were filming together. He barely spoke unless she demanded a response. Then one day, while flipping through Instagram reels for tattoo inspiration, Melissa saw a clip. A girl with lavender hair, covered in tattoos, laughing as she wiped a client's arm clean. At ghost.graves. "She's local," Melissa muttered, scrolling. "You like her style. You should get your arm done there." Dean barely nodded. But something clicked. A week later, Dean walked into Natalie Graves' studio for the first time. He said he wanted a sleeve. Biomechanical. Dark tones. Maybe some kanji, if it looks cool. Natalie asked questions. He answered in short, careful sentences. She assumed he was shy. He wasn't. He was studying. Over the next few weeks, Dean became a regular at the studio. His sessions were long. Natalie liked to take her time, let the work speak for itself. And Dean didn't mind sitting still. He watched her, not in a creepy, obvious way, but with surgical focus. The way she moved, talked, organized her inks. The playlist she queued up. The way she stared out the window when she thought no one was looking. They talked, slowly at first, mostly about art, then about childhood. That's when the similarities started to appear. Both raised by someone else. Both neglected by mothers too busy chasing their own lives. Both grew up in the background of their own homes. Natalie didn't open up to many people, but something about Dean felt familiar. He didn't judge. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, nodded, asked the kind of questions you don't get from strangers. She didn't know much about Melissa, just that she was a former business partner, whatever that meant. And when Dean said he was done with that life, Natalie believed him. Then one night after a long session, he asked if she wanted to grab coffee. She hesitated. But then why not? He was quiet company. Safe. And for someone who'd spent her life surviving on instinct, Natalie's didn't sound any alarms. Not yet. What she didn't see were the late-night texts Melissa had been sending him. The threats. The pleading. The guilt. She didn't see the way Dean saved her Instagram photos into a private folder. Didn't know about the Reddit threads he'd started under fake names, analyzing her work, speculating about her personal life. She only saw what she wanted to. A man who understood her pain. Who didn't flinch at her tattoos. Who looked at her like she was already somebody, not someone still trying. By October 2021, Melissa was out. Officially. Dean moved in with Natalie the following month. He brought his duffel bags, his camera gear, and a quiet that seemed comforting. Natalie thought she had a partner. A supporter. Someone who'd help her manage her growing brand. But what she really had was a storm brewing in slow motion. At first, it felt like partnership. Dean was quiet, efficient. He made coffee before Natalie got up. Helped sort through her commission requests. Cleaned the tattoo station like a ritual. She let him handle small things. DMs, scheduling, even some early drafts of course templates. He didn't talk much, but he worked, the kind of silent worker she'd never had in her life. For Natalie, it was a gift. For Dean, it was infiltration. They didn't post much together. Natalie was careful with her personal life online. Her fans liked mystery and she understood that. But behind the scenes, Dean was in every room. Every inbox. Every password reset. He offered to streamline her digital world. He set up automation for posting content. Sorted her photo library, categorized her tattoos by style and engagement rate. "You're building a brand," he told her once. "And brands don't sleep." Natalie laughed at the time. She didn't know that Dean wasn't building a brand. He was building a cage. Then Melissa came back. Not physically. Not at the door. Not screaming or crying like in those cliché ex-girlfriend stories. She came back through quiet warnings. Text messages. Comments under Natalie's posts that got deleted quickly. "Careful with that one. Ask him who filmed his last girlfriend. He doesn't love artists. He drains them." Natalie ignored it at first. Internet drama. Jealous ex. No time for it. But one day her business email was flooded with strange screenshots. Raw footage from amateur adult sites. A woman who looked just like Melissa. Dean behind the camera. Some clips, Dean in front of it. Natalie felt sick. She didn't confront him right away. She watched. She rechecked the files on Dean's laptop. Found hidden folders. A text thread archived under the name Mechanic Supply. It was Melissa. Hundreds of messages, some dating back months. She read in silence. Melissa begging. Pleading. Then accusing. Then threatening. "You left me for her. You're going to do the same thing again. You said I was the only one. And finally, I'll tell her. You won't stop me." That night, Natalie locked herself in the bathroom and cried. Not because she loved Dean. Not even because he lied. But because she had let him into everything. Her art, her process, her business. And now she couldn't tell where he ended and she began. The next morning, Dean noticed she was distant. She smiled too big. Too forced. He sensed it. Of course he did. He asked, "Are you mad at me?" She said, "No. Just tired." He didn't believe her. She knew it. Then came the turning point. Natalie was invited to appear on a controversial YouTube talk show. Drawn Out, a series focused on underground artists and taboo careers. They wanted her to talk about tattoos, body autonomy, and her online rise. Dean encouraged her to do it. "I'll help prep your talking points," he said. But Natalie had other plans. She wasn't going there to boost her brand. She was going to break free, publicly. The episode aired April 8, 2022. It started like any other episode. Stylized intro. Edgy background music. A host with too much energy. Then Natalie appeared. Dressed in all black, boots laced high, her violet hair glowing under studio lights. The host smiled too wide. "So, Natalie Graves, tattooist, influencer, and adult content creator?" She didn't flinch. "That last part, not by choice," she said calmly. "I was managed into it." Dean was watching from their apartment. Alone. Frozen. The show turned heated. The host brought in a surprise guest. Angela Graves, Natalie's estranged mother. Angela sat stiffly in a guest chair, nervously smoothing her skirt. When asked what she thought of her daughter's career, she hesitated. I think someone got in her head. When they asked who, she looked straight into the camera. Dean Mercer. Dean didn't finish watching the episode. He slammed the laptop shut. Backstage, Natalie felt shaky, but free. Like she'd said something that couldn't be taken back, and shouldn't be. She told producers not to send her a copy. She didn't want to relive it, but the internet did. Over the next few days, her inbox exploded. Support. Hate. Threats. Fan edits. Every opinion from every direction. She ignored most of it. Instead, she quietly started liquidating her belongings. Camera gear. Furniture. Old sketchbooks. She booked a storage unit. Renewed her passport. She told her best friend Jamie, I'm leaving. Where? Seoul. I have friends there. Tattoo scene's different. Cleaner. Jamie didn't ask why. She didn't need to. Dean noticed the change. She stopped sharing passwords. Put locks on drawers that used to stay open. Turned off the apartment's shared Wi-Fi and switched to a hotspot. He asked, Are we okay? She smiled again. That same fake smile. Just tired. But she wasn't tired. She was scared. She'd seen what he did to Melissa. Not just physically. Emotionally. Spiritually. Dean didn't break people with fists. He erased them. Pixel by pixel. Until they couldn't tell which thoughts were their own anymore. And Natalie wasn't going to let that happen. Not to her. Not this time. You'd think leaving would be easy. Especially when your bags are packed. Especially when you've already said goodbye in your heart. But walking away from someone like Dean Mercer isn't like walking out of a room. It's like trying to unchain your shadow. Natalie Graves had never felt more alive and more afraid at the same time. After the talk show, her follower count spiked. Brands reached out. More clients than she could handle. But none of it felt real. What felt real was Dean's silence. He didn't confront her about the show. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't smash anything. Instead, he cleaned the kitchen. Watered her plants. Answered business emails like nothing had happened. That, Natalie realized, was worse. She started sleeping with the door locked. At night, she'd lie awake thinking about Seoul. Not the neon streets or the food or the new tattoo shop she'd open. Just the air. Air that didn't smell like Dean. Air that didn't press in with eyes and unspoken rules. She sold more of her things. Posted stories with vague captions. New chapter coming soon. Fresh start. Watch me rise. Dean saw them. He didn't say a word. Then came July 31st. A Sunday. Natalie met up with Evan Lee, the Korean-American TikTok creator who'd been quietly orbiting her world for months. He wasn't flashy. Wasn't trying to save her. He just listened. They walked around Balboa Park. Grabbed boba. Talked about Seoul, about tattoos, about how different things could be. Evan told her she deserved more. She believed him. When she got home that evening, Dean was already in the apartment. Lights off. Music playing softly, her playlist, not his. He didn't say anything when she walked in. Just looked at her. Too long. She said, Hey. He said, Where were you? Out. With him? She didn't answer. Dean nodded slowly. Got up. Walked into the kitchen. Started washing a glass that was already clean. Natalie went into the bedroom, locked the door, and cried without making a sound. Later that night, she texted Evan. Don't reach out again. This was a mistake. He replied almost instantly. What? What are you talking about? Are you okay? She didn't respond. That was the last time anyone heard directly from Natalie Graves. In the days that followed, things seemed normal. Her Instagram stayed active. Stories posted. A new OnlyFans promo. A course discount. A video showing her packing up artwork to ship. But Jamie, her best friend, noticed something was off. Natalie stopped responding to voice notes. Stopped liking messages. Every reply was text only. Robotic. No emojis. No spelling mistakes. Too polished. Too scripted. Jamie called. No answer. She called again. Nothing. Texted, Call me when you get a sec. Just want to hear your voice. The reply came 5 hours later. Busy. Talk soon. Natalie never sent one-word replies. Natalie never took 5 hours to answer Jamie. Jamie knew something was wrong. She just didn't know what yet. A few days later, Dean showed up at a small gathering hosted by one of Natalie's artist friends. Uninvited. Unshaven. Wearing the hoodie she hated. He told them Natalie had flown ahead to Korea. Said she'd left him in charge of her stuff. That she was finally doing what she wanted. Nobody believed him. But nobody had proof. Then he said something strange. Too strange to ignore. He was talking to one of Natalie's old studio interns, a girl named Lexi, when he said, "You know, when someone asks you to help them die, it's not really murder. It's mercy." Lexi froze. Dean smiled, took a sip of beer, and added, "We had a pact, just in case she ever felt too broken." She asked. "I delivered." He laughed. "Nobody else did." Lexi told Jamie. Jamie called the police. On August 9th, officers forced entry into Natalie's apartment. The AC was off. The blinds were shut. The smell hit them first. They found Natalie's body in the bathtub, covered with a black tarp, decomposed. Over 20 stab wounds, most around the throat and chest. She had been dead for at least a week. Dean was nowhere to be found. They found him 28 hours later, hiding in a rundown motel in Chula Vista. Alone. No bags. No passport. Just her phone. Still logged in. In his first interview with police, Dean was calm. He said it was a fight. That Natalie snapped. That she lunged at him. He claimed self-defense. Then, a day later, he changed his story. Said Natalie asked him to do it. Said it was part of a long-standing agreement. Said he'd helped her. The detectives didn't buy it. Neither did the DA. But online, some people did. Comments started appearing. Maybe she was depressed. She talked about dark stuff before. He's not a killer. He's just broken. Jamie fought back in every thread. Natalie wasn't weak. Natalie wasn't suicidal. She was leaving. That's what got her killed. For a week, the world still thought Natalie Graves was alive. She posted stories, discount codes, teasers for upcoming tattoo course bundles. She even replied to fans with cold, generic lines that sounded nothing like her. The truth? Natalie wasn't running her accounts. Dean Mercer was. In the days after the murder, Dean didn't run. He didn't even hide, not in the way most people would. He stayed in the apartment. Natalie's apartment. He kept the curtains drawn, taped up the air vents, sprayed her perfume every few hours to cover the smell. He opened her laptop and sat at her desk like he belonged there. Logged into her Instagram, her course platform, her PayPal. He answered client messages, rescheduled appointments, replied to fan DMs with smiley faces and exclamation marks. He was good at it. Too good. That's what made Jamie Collins lose sleep. Jamie had known Natalie for nearly a decade. They met in community college, both art majors, both loners in different ways. Natalie used to joke, "I only trust two people, myself and Jamie with coffee." So when Jamie started getting replies like, "Hi, sorry been super busy. Black Heart will circle back later today," she knew. Natalie never used filler fluff. Never put emojis in professional replies. Never said, "circle back." Jamie called. Straight to voicemail. Meanwhile, Dean was unraveling, slowly, quietly. He stopped eating. Drank instant coffee like it was medicine. He shaved. Then stopped shaving. He rewatched the episode of Drawn Out in Silence, again and again. Paused it when Natalie looked angry. Zoomed in on her eyes. Spoke to the screen. "You said we were partners." At night, he sat in the dark with her phone, typing drafts of messages he never sent. "You should have stayed. We could have gone together. You made me do this." Then he'd delete them. On August 6th, Jamie finally did what fear had stopped her from doing earlier. She went to the police. She told them everything. The changed tone in Natalie's messages. The odd posts. The deleted comments. The night Dean made that chilling comment to Lexi. She begged them to check the apartment. They did. They knocked. No answer. They knocked again. Still silence. Then they broke down the door. What they found inside was still wrong. Dead yet curated. The AC was turned off. The lights were off. The air was heavy and foul, like rot behind a locked freezer. In the bathroom they found her. Natalie, curled in the bathtub, covered in a black tarp, stabbed over 20 times, most of them to the throat and chest. There were signs of a struggle in the bedroom, a knocked-over chair, scratches on the doorframe, blood spatter leading from the hall to the tub. But the most disturbing thing? Her workspace was still active. Laptop on. Tabs open. Camera facing her tattoo bench. Dean had been using it. Sitting there. Pretending. The coroner estimated she'd been dead for 7 to 9 days. That meant all those posts, all those DMs, all those smiling stories came from a corpse's account. Dean was located 28 hours later, holed up in a rundown motel in Chula Vista, about 30 minutes from downtown San Diego. He answered the door like someone who expected a pizza delivery. No resistance. No remorse. When asked why he hadn't run farther, he just said, "I didn't have a plan." In his first interview with detectives, Dean gave a version of events that sounded almost rehearsed. He and Natalie had fought. She came at him with a knife. He panicked. Self-defense. The detectives didn't buy it. The wounds told a different story. Most were frontal. Precise. Not defensive. Not wild. It looked more like a controlled attack, like someone finishing what they started. The next day, Dean changed his story. He said Natalie asked him to do it. That they had a pact. That she had struggled with depression for years. "She begged me," he said. She couldn't go through with it herself. But the evidence kept contradicting him. Natalie had booked her flight to Seoul. Had signed a lease on a shared tattoo studio space in Mapo District. Had applied for a long-term artist visa through a Korean sponsor. She wasn't planning to die. She was planning to start over. Then came the text. Detectives examined both phones. Natalie's last known message was to Evan Lee. "Don't reach out again." This was a mistake. But it was typed. No voice message. No punctuation. No typing rhythm match. It read like a decoy. There were drafts in her notes app. One said, "Dean scares me. I can't prove anything yet. But I don't think I'm safe." It was time-stamped 4 hours before the estimated time of death. Dean's browsing history didn't help his case either. Searches included, how long does a body take to decompose in closed space? How to log into Instagram without 2FA? Is deleting messages after death illegal? How to make a staged suicide look real? But the detail that turned everyone's stomach was what he did after. The live stream. 2 days after Natalie was killed, Dean used a pre-recorded video of her doing a tattoo tutorial and streamed it as if it were live. He sat off camera replying to comments, saying, "Thanks for the support." Typing, "I'm doing great. Can't wait to move." People cheered her on. They didn't know she was already dead. The courtroom was colder than anyone expected. Not the temperature, the atmosphere. It wasn't just the reporters crowding the benches, or the way the bailiffs stood with both hands on their belts like they were expecting a riot. It was something else. Dean Mercer entered in a plain gray jumpsuit, his hair tied back, his wrists in cuffs. He looked thinner, paler, like a man who had spent the last several months talking only to himself, and believing the answers. He didn't look at the gallery. He didn't look at the prosecution. He looked at the empty front row seat that had once been reserved for Natalie Graves' mother. Angela didn't come. It had been 6 months since Natalie's body was found. 6 months of online outrage. 6 months of interviews, reaction videos, TikTok true crime threads, YouTube breakdowns. Dean's name trended for days. Then Natalie's did. Then both. People called it the live stream murder, even though the murder had already happened long before that stream aired. But now, it wasn't the internet's courtroom. It was the state's. The prosecution called it premeditated murder. They had the timeline. Natalie planning to move. Dean accessing her passwords. The text. The fake post. The cleanup. The perfume sprayed to mask decomposition. The staged livestream. They had forensic evidence. Blood under the bed. Fingerprint patterns on the kitchen drawer where the knife was kept. The angle and depth of the wounds, not defensive, not chaotic, but calculated. And they had motive. Control. Obsession. Possession dressed up as partnership. But the defense? The defense told a different story. They called it mercy. They said Natalie was depressed, had been for years. That Dean had supported her through breakdowns. That he had stood by her when others didn't. That they made a verbal pact. "If I ever can't go on, you'll help me leave." They claimed Natalie asked for it. They read messages allegedly from her. Cryptic ones. Dark jokes. Voice notes pulled from cloud backups. They even called an expert to suggest that her history of body modification, her tattoos, her piercings, her occasional cosplay, were signs of dissociation, identity instability. It was a reach. But to some people in the jury, it landed. Then Jamie took the stand. She wasn't crying. Not even shaking. She was furious, the kind of fury that calcifies after weeks of guilt. She told them about the last voice notes Natalie had sent. About the excitement she had for Korea. About the suitcase, the apartment, the new life. She said, Natalie wasn't planning to die. She was planning to escape. They asked her, "Why didn't you call the police sooner?" She answered, "Because part of me thought, maybe he got inside her head. And part of me was scared he'd get inside mine." The jury heard from digital forensic analysts, showing how Dean had logged into Natalie's accounts minutes after her estimated time of death, how he used her notes app to draft responses, how he deleted camera roll photos after the murder, how he watched himself, on her phone, from their earlier videos replaying her voice on a loop. He didn't just kill her, the prosecutor said. He performed her. Dean sat stone still throughout, until the day he testified. That was the only time he looked directly at the camera, the court's, not the media's. And what he said froze the room. She asked me. She made me promise. She said she couldn't take it anymore. She said the internet turned her into a product. She wanted peace. Then he added, "It was the only thing I ever gave her that didn't make her flinch." In the gallery, someone gasped. The prosecutor leaned forward. And what about the 22 stab wounds? What about her throat? What about pretending she was alive for a full week? Dean paused. I didn't want her fans to panic. She hated disappointing them. The room broke. A woman in the back, Natalie's old intern Lexi, ran out in tears. The jury took 4 hours. They found Dean guilty of second-degree murder. Not first. Not premeditated. They believed he killed her. But not that he planned it like an execution. They said it was impulsive. A moment of emotional disturbance. He was sentenced to 8 years in a maximum security facility. Eligible for parole in 5. The courtroom didn't cheer. Didn't cry. Just emptied. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters yelled. Jamie stepped into the sun and whispered to herself. She deserved more than 8 years. The internet roared again. Hashtag justice for Natalie. Hashtag 8 years isn't enough. Hashtag stop romanticizing killers. Natalie's fan pages posted tributes. People got tattoos in her honor, some even mimicking her signature ink style. But her official accounts were gone. Deleted by the state. All that was left were reposts. Memories. Silence. Angela Graves, Natalie's mother, never gave a public statement. She moved away, somewhere in Montana, according to a relative. She refused all interview requests. But Natalie's grandmother, the one who raised her, wrote one thing online. Natalie was not broken. She was just tired of being rearranged by people who didn't know how to love her whole. Even after the trial, Natalie Graves wouldn't disappear. She lingered. Not in the apartment. Not in the courtroom. Not even in the ground where she was buried with only 6 people in attendance. She stayed on the internet. In screenshots. In videos. In memory. Her official accounts were gone, wiped by court order after forensic investigators closed their case. But her digital fingerprints remained. Reposts. Fan edits. Tattoo compilations. Time-lapse videos of her designs, ink moving across skin like liquid memory. And her voice. That light, sharp voice from tutorials. From live streams. From podcast interviews. It haunted timelines like a familiar song you didn't know you missed until it stopped playing. People began calling her the ghost account. An artist silenced. A life overwritten. But a presence still there. Jamie Collins tried to go offline after the sentencing. She deleted Instagram. Paused her TikTok. Turned off the notifications that kept reminding her what she didn't do in time. But Natalie wouldn't let her go. One night, Jamie was scrolling YouTube on autopilot. She clicked on a suggested for you video, black thumbnail, white text. She was still posting after she died. The Natalie Graves case, Digital Haunting EP4. Jamie didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She just watched silently as a stranger dissected her best friend's death with background music and animated transitions. In the comments section. So messed up. He totally planned it. I think she knew. She was just too deep. R.I.P. Natalie. You were light in this world. What kind of man uses a dead woman's account to get likes? 8 years. That's all she was worth to them. Jamie closed the video. She went to her closet. Pulled out the envelope. The one Natalie had given her 2 weeks before she died. Unopened. Sealed with a red sticker that said, "Only if I'm gone." Jamie had forgotten about it. Maybe on purpose. She sat on the edge of her bed. Tore it open. Inside, a plane ticket. So, one way. Natalie's name. Departure date, August 8th. She had been 2 days away from leaving. 2 days. The second page was a letter. Handwritten. If you're reading this, I didn't make it. If I left and he let me, then thank you for being there. If I didn't, please tell my story right. I'm not perfect. I've made bad choices. I stayed too long. Trusted too deep. Thought I could change someone who never asked to be fixed. But I love this life. I love the ink. I love the sound of machines. I love being something more than skin. If he tried to erase me, don't let him. Let them see what happens when silence is used like a weapon. Let them know I was here. Jamie folded the letter. She didn't cry. Not because she didn't want to. Because she couldn't stop shaking. The next morning she posted something for the first time in months. A photo of Natalie sketching on her iPad. No filter. No music. Caption. You were more than what he made of you. That post reached over 2 million views. People began sharing it, tagging it, telling her story. Artists around the world, from Seoul to Sao Paulo, inked tribute pieces. Some with her artwork, some in her style, but all with the same word beneath them. Ghost. Dean Mercer remains incarcerated at Blackgate State Prison. His parole hearing is scheduled for 2029. He has declined every interview request, refuses to speak to journalists, still receives letters, mostly from people who believe he was misunderstood. Some even call him a martyr. He never replies. He doesn't need to. He already said what he wanted, and no one will ever forget it. But Natalie's story? It lives on. Not because she died in a headline-worthy way, but because she refused to be edited out. She was not a footnote, not a victim defined by who hurt her. She was a creator, a builder, a girl who became art and refused to be erased. She moved to chase fame. He followed to chase blood. But in the end, it was her ink that remained.